I do plan on being a motivational speaker somewhat and a public speaker, so I need to start working on it. So, and I wrote some notes down, but I'm trying to come from my heart. A lot of this is my heart, but I wrote some stuff down. I'm just to try to give my little testimony. I got from far back as I can remember, my furthest memories is me living in New York and my father being an abusive person. My mother packing up all of our stuff and taking me, my younger brother and two older sisters and driving all the way down to Miami. And then we stayed with some family there, and then my father come there not too long after, still the same abusive person. So from that time, we lived with an abusive parent and abusive home from the time I was, as far back as I can remember, till my early teens. Father's an alcoholic, abusive, and my mom ended up, him and my mom ended up splitting. I'm still young, 13, 14 years old, maybe a little younger. And then my mom met another person who was the same alcoholic, was abusive, but not physically, more mentally abusive. And he got a lot of issues, and we had to deal with that when we were growing up. So a lot of times we just stayed away and tried raising ourselves. And then I got around a lot of negative people, and I ended up 13 years old. Actually before we, right after we met the stepdad, I got in a car accident. Where I was actually walking home from school and I got hit by a car. And they pronounced me dead twice, but I came back to life. I was in the hospital, was in traction. I was in traction for months. I was in a coma for a week. They brought me back. And I was having severe head trauma. And I had issues dealing with it, and I had trouble dealing with it. And we ended up moving from, I was having a little bit of issues in school, then we ended up moving from Miami to Vero Beach, Sebastian area, and I went to school, and I still had so many issues because I wasn't able to learn nothing because I had severe head trauma when I was going to regular school, and I didn't fit in with nobody. And so I developed anger. I developed a violent personality, and I become violent. I was so violent, my mother put me in boys' school or juvenile detention center to try to calm me down, and that didn't help. That made it worse because I had to fight in there. I had to fight and become violent in there, and I was in and out of juvenile detention centers and boys' school from the time I was 14 to the time I was 18, over 30 times. And when I was 18 years old, I ended up going to jail, in and out of jail till I was 20 and going to prison. From the time I was 20 till my early 30s, I had been in prison 4 times. But my first time in prison, I got out pretty quickly, and I started thinking I was a tough guy. Started drinking alcohol and hanging out with some older people, and got in a bar fight and beat the guy up pretty bad. And beat him up pretty bad and was facing some time, and I'm going to prison for it. I went to prison with no education. I was just wondering, what can I do? I don't want to live this life. I don't want to be in prison. I got to start working on something. Right when I was in the reception center, I got in a fight with somebody. Somebody stepped on the back of my shoes, and I beat him up pretty bad. So they threw me in the hole. I got out of the hole, and I was like, man, there wasn't allowed to smoke in there, so I decided to quit smoking. At the time, in Florida prisons, you were allowed to smoke, and I knew I needed to quit smoking. And I did quit smoking, and I said, man, if I could quit smoking, I could do anything. And then I went from a sixth grade education to a high school diploma. I studied hard, high school diploma within 6 months. So I was like, man, there was a glimmer of hope that I'm not the person my dad abusive used to tell me that I was nobody, I'm a loser. My dad told me this, you're gonna end up in prison all your life. My dad told me. So I mean, for a little kid, this is in my brain. You know, this is my influences. This is what I had to look forward to. But when I got my GED, I realized that he was wrong. I didn't have to live this life. I can accomplish things. And I started doing stuff to accomplish and work better than I knew, and I wasn't that loser that I was told. I ended up getting out of prison and was doing all right. Then I started hanging around the wrong people. I went and got an education. Actually, I went to a business administration class while I was in prison that one time, my second time, and I went to a business administration. I got degrees, well not degrees, I just called certificates, like a trade school. So I got that, and I was able to do some stuff. But I got out and started hanging around the wrong people again, the same kind of people I was hanging before I went in. So not long after that, I started doing drugs again, and drinking again, and went to a bar and got in another fight, another aggravated battery. And since I had already had it, and under Florida law, they say, they call it Habitual Offender Act, and it was only like 3 or 4 years since my last one, so they was gonna enhance it, and they could have doubled, they could carry 30 years, so I was facing, well, I wasn't facing 30 years yet, but that was the first time. Yeah, actually I did get out, because I got out and got a woman pregnant. See, that's why I kind of know I should have been looking at my notes. But I got a woman pregnant after that, and I got a little girl, and the little girl changed my life. I knew what love was. I knew God put that little girl in my life, and I knew what love was. I never knew what love was. No one ever showed me love, but when God gave me my little girl, I knew I'd lay down my life for her. And I'm facing 30 years, but I had to have my little girl, and she's out there, she's the love of my life, and God used her to show me what He does. He died on the cross for me, and I would die for her. So it was a spiritual awakening of the love that He had for me. That He laid down His life, and I started understanding the Word, and I got to on a spiritual level. I could see and understand His Word, because I got out of myself. I started not feeding my flesh, I started feeding my spirit, continuing to grow and spiritually and understand His Word. God used her. I ended up going and studying and getting some more certificates. Did pretty good in prison, stayed out of trouble, got out. My daughter was still out there. My daughter was 5 years old now. I didn't get the 30 years, but I ended up getting 5 years. I did 5 years with my daughter. When I got out, my daughter was 5 years old. So I started spending time with her and working on supporting her, and I supported her. I supported her work and tried working for a living, and that went on for a while. As she got older, her and her mother ended up moving from Florida up here to Fostoria, and I was still down there. I started working on a tattoo career. I did block masonry and did a little bit here, staying out of trouble. And I was doing pretty good. But let me go back. I'm sorry, I skipped a part. When I got trouble, when I was facing 30 years, and my daughter was 9 months old, and I was facing that 30 years, I hit rock bottom. That was the last time I had a drink. That was in 1989. That was the last time I had any alcohol. So I'm celebrating almost 25 years. My daughter's 25 years old now. But then she was just a little baby. She's like I said, God used her, and I've always been there for her. I've kept a good relationship with her. But she ended up moving up here, her and her mother, and I was down in Florida. I ended up doing tattoos and become a tattoo artist, working on tattoos for a living. And then she called me one day and told me she was pregnant, 16 years old. She told me she was pregnant, 16 or 17 years old. So I was like, all right, I dropped everything, sold everything, and moved up to Findlay, Ohio. And that was like 7 years ago. I didn't know anybody. I had no clue of anybody, so I didn't even try to work in a tattoo shop, because that is by word of mouth and knowing people. And I didn't really want to be broke. I wanted to be able to help my daughters and I want to be able to succeed. So I started going to a job place, and I found out they hooked me up with a great job. I was a commercial painter for 6 years. I had become getting on with a company. They sent me to the union. I was a union painter, journeyman within 4 or 5 years. And I also opened up a tattoo studio on the side, so I was working 2 jobs. And in the meantime, I met my beautiful wife. We ended up getting married, you know, and I've been staying sober, all because I stayed sober. I could have did it if I didn't stay sober, but I stayed sober and I continued. As soon as I got up here, I found a church, and I was going to a church up here. And the church was a pretty good church, and I continued to work on my relationship with God. And I ended up opening another business. I quit doing the commercial painting and opened up a little boxing gym. You know, all because of staying sober and spending my time and focusing on putting my focus on God and working on my relationship. And I'm still working on my relationship, and it's getting better and better every day. I go to a men's group at my church with my pastor, and me and my pastor we meet a couple times a month for breakfast, spend time together, and some other people from church, and continue to work on my relationship with God and helping others. And I'm working on being a help to others. I started a Celebrate Recovery group on Facebook. That's how I was reached out to, and I help people through that, and I help people through church and in the boxing gym, and I meet people every day, and I tell them about God when I'm a tattoo artist. You know, I meet people that you wouldn't expect to go to a tattoo artist and get told about God, but it happens, you know. And I'm still working on it, and I want to continue to help people. And I want to continue to grow, and I want to continue to get closer to my God. And you know what I mean. I want to serve God. I want to continue to serve God, and I want to continue to celebrate my recovery. And you know what I mean. I like to get to know you. And I like to try to come up here at least once a week or once a month or whatever. It's a little job, but I'm starting a little group too through my pastor, and maybe if talking to my wife, we're thinking of starting to celebrate, maybe something like this, maybe not a Celebrate Recovery group, but just a men's group, so us men can get together and deal with things, you know. And that's my goals, you know. The Lord has really blessed me. Like I said, we own 2 businesses, we own a house, we own vehicles, you know. I got a great relationship with my grandbabies. I spend time with my grandbabies. I bring them to church every week. That was a goal of mine. I bring them to church, and I make sure they're in church, and they love their papa. And I love to hear them call me papa. You know, it's a joy to be able to do that. You know what I mean? When I was told when I was younger, I was not going to ever have nothing, never be nothing, but I knew better. It was by putting my faith in Jesus Christ, using knowing the things that I hear. Faith cometh by hearing. A lot of times I got to tell myself, you know, you are somebody. You know, faith cometh by hearing. Me telling myself, you know, I can move mountains. I move mountains by what I say. I talk to this mountain. He says, you can speak to this mountain remove. This mountain will be removed. And that's why I continue to live my life, by speaking things into existence, by walking by faith. Walking by faith one day at a time, and walking by faith in moving mountains. You know, and that's pretty much all I got to say. I just thank you for listening. I hope I'm